Take on the U.S. economy. The number of people applying for unemployment benefits dropped 20,000 last week to 331,000, suggesting that Americans are facing fewer layoffs. But now we're also getting a clearer picture of just who the long-term unemployed are, as the Wall Street Journal reports that more than 1 in 6 men between the ages of 25 and 54 don't have a job, totaling a shocking 10.4 million men in the prime of their lives. And having so many men out of work is partly a symptom of a U.S. economy slow to recover from the worst recession in 75 years. Mike Santoli is senior columnist for Yahoo Finance and joins us now. It is interesting, more than 1 in 6 men in the prime of their lives don't have a job.
Yeah.
Mike, why does that matter? Why is that profile important to know?
Well, it represents this unusual kind of recovery we have with this big pool of idle workers, either not really still looking for work, many of them able to work. So they're either sidelined by a gap in job skills or the kinds of jobs they had before that simply aren't as plentiful as they were. I mean, construction jobs are nowhere near back to where they were. A lot of big companies, kind of middle management, have been shed. And a lot of these men are at a point in their careers, let's say they're, later in their 40s and 50s, where it's not easy to kind of reinvent. And also, the demands for the income they might want to go back into to grab a job might be higher than the job market has right now.
It's interesting to note that in the 1970s, 6% of men between the ages of 25 and 54 were without jobs. Now we're at 17%, but when the government asked them, what are you doing? Many of them labeled themselves as not looking for work. So the government doesn't count them as unemployed.
That's right.
So what does that mean for the numbers that we actually see when it comes to the job market and how accurate they are?
Yeah, I mean, the percentage of people theoretically able to work who are working is down to about 62% from 66% a few years ago. That makes the unemployment rate seem like it's a lot happier number than it really is. So we could actually see significant declines in the unemployment rate, even with the kind of modest job growth that we've seen for the last couple of years, without it really meaning we're in a booming economy. So it kind of is, there's a couple stories going on here. There's a demographic story for sure. Some people are voluntarily or not kind of early retired. They're somehow other sidelined from the economy. You had 2-income households, now 1 income, and they're getting by. So all these things are at work. We just don't know how much is kind of a long-term structural change or just a matter of this cycle.
And so the number that you mentioned, that percentage, the 66 to 62 or 63%, that's when people are talking about the labor force, right? And that's telling us something indicative about the economy, whether we think it's about retirement or whether it's about the fact that there aren't the jobs out there.
Right.
That's tough to know.
It's very tough to know, and probably only in retrospect will we know for sure. What it does mean, though, is if this is kind of a demographic story, then this kind of job growth we're getting is going to mean that there isn't really this pool of workers waiting there to be kind of drawn back into the active economy as much as we think right now. So we actually are seeing, interestingly, shortages of workers in some pockets of the economy. We're probably going to see more shortages, but there's just not this kind of link between people who are looking and the jobs available.
Where are the shortages now?
Oh, truck drivers and things like that. So in the wide middle of the country, where you have the oil and gas boom, for example, massive gaps. And also you always have these mismatches in engineers. That's why the tech industry is really hoping to loosen some immigration laws.
So talk to us then. We have this big jobs report tomorrow, and there's been a lot of anticipation. Some have said that's one of the reasons why the markets were a little jittery. They look okay today. The Dow's up about 150 points. What do you expect to see? What is that going to tell us, this first jobs report for January, the first month of the year? What is that really going to tell us about the year that we should expect?
The forecasts are for about 185,000 new jobs. That's almost exactly the trend for the last 6 and 12 months. So essentially, they're hoping for a bounce back to a currently normal rate of job growth. It'll tell us that it's still kind of a slow and steady recovery. December was a weak number, very surprisingly weak. What we're hoping tomorrow is that it looks like a downside aberration based in part on weather. So if that's the way it happens, it looks like that's probably, steady as she goes for the domestic economy.
Just something else we could blame winter for.
Absolutely.
On the East Coast, at least. Mike, thank you. Great to see you as always. John?